Well, I asked Mark if he knew that song and could do it, and so thank you for putting that together kind of on short notice, because I thought that song was particularly applicable to the fact that this weekend, yesterday, was Bidwell Bless You, Bidwell Bark. And for those of you who are not familiar to it here in Chico, Bidwell Bark is an annual event that the Butte Humane Society puts on to raise funds for their shelter. And it's a huge thing that happens in 1 mile, at 1 mile I should say, I guess. And this was the first year that we were able to participate. And we now have, officially it's been coming together and meeting, something called the Animal Kinship Circle. And to me, the Animal Kinship Circle is you got a friend in me. So in regards to how I feel and we feel about the animal kingdom. And so we have a team, and we went and we had a booth, or I call it a booth. We had a nice little thing with a table and displays and people. And so I'd love it for our circle members, they're kind of wearing their yellow shirts today, to stand up. And so Carl, could I have the house lights for 1 sec so people can see them? There's Doug, who is our new member, and Amy, and Pat and Sherry. Pat was there, and Mal. There you are, Pat. You should have stood up. And Eve. There's Eve and Marion, and Molly Boyle was there. And thank you. Thank you. And so we were there for the day to present ourselves with the Animal Kinship Circle, and then the short story about that, in case you didn't know. And I may talk more about that next week, because it's going to be St. Francis of Assisi Day. But the idea being that we support the spiritual equality of all animals, all sentient beings. And so the Animal Kinship Circle comes together to do prayer for animals, or their caregivers. And I often see animal clients in my office or make house calls. And so it's about getting out that idea of a spiritual support system for animals and those who care for animals. So it was our launch and our debut to be there. So we decided we would wear the shirts today in support of that, and the bag, and we raised, and this is exciting, our little circle, our little brand new team, Animal Kinship Circle, raised over $500 for Butte Humane. Woof, woof, woof. So, it was great. It was quite fun, and they had a great event, and thank you to the team for being there and supporting to get this important word out. And that's why every time you hear the town crier talk about it, in case you paid attention, when we say you can fill out a prayer request for your loved one or your animal companion, it's because we do prayer work for animals. What a concept, huh? One, so it is. So we have that available for our community, as well as what we're trying to do to bring it out into the bigger community. And I was very excited to have a conversation with Kristen Staggs, who is the president at Butte Humane, about, it gets me so excited, the ability to take some training there in terms of support, particularly in regards to grief support, for not only people who are losing their animals, but for the people who work at the shelter, because that's a heck of a difficult job to be able to have to be there and do what needs to be done, but to stay whole in that process. So we're going to talk about that for the beginning of the year, having what they call a friend raiser. I kind of like it. You know how I like words. Friend raiser. So we'll be involved for that. So avail yourself of us if you have questions about that. Sherry put out a little display of what we had available at the booth yesterday, so you can take a handout. And we're trying to get a whole bunch of things together. We're not having the animal blessing this year for a lot of reasons, but we may have it in spring, and we may have it in conjunction with Butte Humane. And we're getting little things like pet alert decals that you can put on your house, so that if there's an emergency, people know that there are 2 dogs and 3 cats and a bunny in there or something. So we're expanding our team, and we launched it yesterday. So that's why the wardrobe. And before I get into, I am so grateful we had 5 Sundays this month, because the Living, Loving, Learning theme has turned out to be so extraordinary and rich. And I have been hearing great feedback about particularly last Sunday's talk and what it's doing with our expanding our mind, little m and the bigger mind. And so before I get into wrap wrapping that up, I do have to say, you know, we all have holidays, Christmas and birthdays and anniversaries that we love to celebrate. And last month I celebrated one near and dear to me with Appreciation Day. But today is also a holiday near and dear to me, so happy National Coffee Day. And because it is that, and today there is a social hour after service, the practitioners are providing that, I will be your barista for the day. So I will be making coffee in Katie Keurig, or chai tea, cafe mocha, decaf, regular. We'll talk, I'll find out your favorite blend and what I should assign you to, and I'll be making coffee for you today because that is so much fun. Animals, coffee, autumn, life is good. Okay. So, since I know this is probably going to block some of the camera, but for a minute, I have been speaking from these 3 particular books this month. Words Can Change Your Brain, written by the gentlemen who write an article in the Science of Mind magazine every month, and The Spontaneous Healing of Belief, et cetera, by Greg Braden. And today I borrowed Dr. Bruce Lipton's title, The Biology of Belief, for the topic title that I'm going to address, because we have been talking about both beliefs and the believing, and the chemistry, the biology, but the psychology of belief systems. So all 3 of these books have influence. So you're going to hear quotes and references from that, as well as some very interesting information that Sharon Saltz sent to me with a conversation afterwards. And then she loaned me this book. It's like about this big. It's one of those coffee table books that, you could leave a door open with, about the brain. Oh my God, I am not finished with this theory, this topic theme, but I'll try and give you a variety next month. There is so much more to understand about the brain, the chemistry, the physiognomy of the brain, and how it affects who we are and what we do spiritually and emotionally. We kind of knew that, and wow, quantum physics has really blown the door open on that, so that we have a greater understanding of our internal chemistry, the wiring of who we are and why we are. So I'm going to go into that, and I'm going to refer to Dr. Lipton talks about the fact that the cells in the brain make the difference, and we talk about beliefs. He said the transformational point in his life was when he said, I realized that a cell's life is not controlled by the physical, I realized that a cell's life is controlled by the physical and energetic environment and not by the genes. This is really important. It is a single cell's awareness of the environment, not its genes, that set into motion the mechanisms of life. So, as I've been saying all month, I grew up with a concept of this is your genetics, this is your DNA, live with it. Make it work for you. Well, okay. I am even toying with the idea of taking all that I'm learning in this concept between the chemical part, the quantum physics part, as well as the spiritual belief part. I still might be 5'6" someday. 5'7", 5'6". But I'm wondering if I'm shorter, because all my life people just kept saying, well, you're short, and you're your family, and you're going to be short, and you're going to have this and this and this. Oh, well, yeah, I guess so. I'm stuck with it. Look at the parents, look at the family. Or you're going to be struggling or have issues with this or this and this because look at your family's history. Oh, yeah, I guess so. Learn to live with it. Not. Now I'm learning how the not can apply. So, then Greg Braden goes on to say, with the new discovery showing that consciousness affects everything from the cells of our bodies to the atoms of our world, belief is clearly at the forefront of exploration today. Whoa. You mean if I really believe differently about who I am, what I do, how I look, I can present a different picture, I might have a different outcome, a different manifestation? Yes. That to me is no small statement, no small probability. And at the same time, I stand with you sensitively realizing that in some ways for me, that's like the keys to the kingdom. really shifting this, putting brain, body, mind, heart into that oneness that we talk about and teach, that I really have this possibility, then you kind of want to hold on a bit, don't you? You mean, now I've been living like this for, 20, 30, 40 something years, and you go, well, I'm kind of used to it. It ain't so bad. You mean I can really change it? I could still be richer, smarter, thinner, cuter, more powerful, more famous, whatever is your thing? Yes. Oh, really? That means I'm probably going to have to pay attention. I'm probably going to have to do some work. Maybe not. It's kind of okay, isn't it? And maybe it is. This is not a lesson about you have to go out, you have to change your life, you have to make something else happen, you have to. And I know that there are some of you out there who are still dancing with the, oh, if only. And what if I, and so but you thought you didn't have a chance. You thought there were no skills or tools with which to change that. And I'm saying we have been standing in the midst of that for whatever, 1926 when he published the first textbook, somebody else do the math, all those years, we've been standing on that textbook and this principle, at least since then, by which we may transform our lives. Ernest Holmes says in that textbook, we are bound by nothing but belief. We are bound by nothing but belief, and that was before quantum physics. That was before Dr. Braden and Dr. Lipton said, your DNA is part of how your genetics are, and yeah, you can change it. There's opportunities to shift it, to recreate it. Really? Well, then we are bound by nothing but our belief that something has to be less than it is. And A Course in Miracles echoes that by saying, all thought produces form at some level. There are no idle thoughts. Ooh. We talked about this at the Science of Mind magazine study group this week. We were talking about the belief idea and thoughts, and I brought up the old-fashioned. Do you remember when you used to say, well, maybe you didn't, but there used to be step on a crack, break your mother's back, little sing-song things, right? And we were talking about how some of us thought, we never said that because what if that really were true? We don't want to hurt our mom. We were trained, we were conditioned, we were brought up with these little sing-song, seemingly harmless beliefs and phrases. And yet we come into this teaching and this philosophy, whether it's science of mind and or quantum physics, and we're being told ad nauseum that there are no idle thoughts, that thoughts become things, that what you think, what you believe is what you outpicture. I don't know if that'll record, but that seems like a pretty potent thing. Oh my. So if there are no idle thoughts, then what I'm thinking and believing is really outpicturing, oh my, what if I don't like what I'm outpicturing? Oh, I have to go back and change my thinking to change my life. Where did I ever hear that before? Change my thinking. And I'm not talking about just the random thoughts, the idle thoughts, changing the thinking. We're talking about the deep thoughts, which is where we went in last week, and which seems to be the thing that got people most last week, myself included, which was in Dr. Braden's book under belief code number 16. The subconscious mind is larger and faster than the conscious mind and can account for as much as 90% of our activity every day. You know, I've been reading that and playing with that concept for 2 weeks now. After I read it and put it in last week's talk and now preparing this week, and I'm going, wow, that's just mind-boggling. And so the studies that he referred to say that up until the age of 7 is when the belief systems or the patterns that we grew up with in our lives, in our home life, at school, or wherever we were, that's what has set into motion, kind of, rubber stamped or cookie cuttered into our subconscious 90% of what we think and what we outpicture. 90%? Yowza. No wonder all of us are drawn to a teaching like this, because we want to be a little more conscious than that. We don't want that 90% of subconscious to just be that sort of Homer Simpson type of subconscious. And we go around through life. We want to be a little more attentive than that, maybe not quite monk on the mountain or whatever. Those are sort of the extremes. But we talk about, we teach, we offer mindfulness practices. Why do we do that? So that we start to reduce that 90%. So that we're not subconsciously operating at 90% of those old belief systems. So, Ernest again says on page 38, the sum total of all our thought, will, purpose, and belief creates a tendency in this law that causes it to react to us according to the sum of that belief. So we live our lives based on the beliefs that we have about the world outside and the world inside. And sometimes it doesn't feel safe out there. So we have different belief systems that keep us kind of protected, shut down, transformed. Sometimes it doesn't feel safe in here when monkey mind starts going, or really difficult times in our lives and we don't know how to deal with it, so it doesn't feel safe inside or outside. And when it doesn't feel safe, and then you've got somebody up here standing here saying, oh, now go within, ask yourself these deep questions, now contemplate, and you start contemplating, you go, oh, yikes. I'm still living off of that belief that I was given at age somewhere between birth and 7. Sometimes there's even theories that it happens in utero, with the chaos that may be surrounding you while you were 9 months in process. I'm out picturing and living belief systems, conditions, thoughts, and patterns that I had nothing to do with, that I had no control over, and might not even agree with. I mean, that was one of the perks growing up. The things that parents, adults, or whatever say, this is what you have to do, you're in my house. These are the rules, right? These are things like, well, when I grow up, I'm going to do this differently. I might leave my bed unmade. I might do things on a Thursday instead of a Tuesday just because, I used to get that sing-song. Oh, my grandmother used to do something about Mondays one day and Tuesdays laundry day or something. There was some, wives' wash day and things like that. So you grew up with that. And I thought, well, what if I don't want to? And yet, what's funny? I find that I still lean to some of those, not consciously. Yikes. Now I know why. Because of that 90%. Bruce Lipton says the character of our lives is determined not by our genes, but by our responses to the environmental signals that propel life. So that knowledge, that self-knowledge and understanding becomes a place of self-empowerment. So that we don't have to live a discomforting, disgruntling, or less than satisfying life if that's not what we want. We don't have to, oh, well, that's my lot in life. I will struggle, I will plod on, I will get by. I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for you if that's what you want differently. I'm not going to impose a process or an expectation on you because, we're all in different phases of our life and we have stuff that happens in our life for a reason. And we go, why is this difficult, hard, sad, icky thing happening? Don't you, and those of us around sort of almost in a maternal, paternal way want to take it away so that you're not in pain, physical pain or emotional pain, financial pain. We want to remove that because we go, oh, it doesn't have to be so hard. And yet sometimes it's not our charge to do that. Sometimes the very thing that's in front of us that is clunky and chunky and hard to do is exactly what we need to understand the internal mechanisms, perhaps to change that 90%. So I was trying to understand all that. And then Sharon and I talked after service, and then she sent me some information, because I know I got some scientific types, left-brainers out there. So, introduction to the limbic system, boys and girls. We're talking brain. Limbic is a Latin term which means border. So it's the border between the neocortex and the subcortical structures. The limbic system includes the hippocampal. Remember I talked about the hippocampus? I just still want a leather jacket, a leather jacket and a little skirt. Hippocampus, and a class ring. And then And then she talked about the amygdala, and she said amygdala to me, and all I could think of was the princess in the Star Wars